Welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're starting a new series. This one we're going to be breaking down the reviews we missed, those that we just couldn't get a video out in time for. These videos, I'm going to guess they're not going to be frequent, probably maybe once a month, but this is just a chance for me to run through some games you might have missed and basically cover should you either add them to your collection or, pass them up entirely. With that, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So starting with the oldest games first, then working our way up to titles that were released actually in just the last week. This month we're kicking things off with Neon Abyss. I think like most of you out there, Neon Abyss caught my eye immediately thanks to just its overall striking style and almost attitude. It screamed I'm badass from the very first trailer, even if at times I will say it can be a little bit too much style over substance. This one though, largely I've got to say it delivered on what I expected. Great visuals, a stunning and honestly creative set of weapons and power-ups, pets that follow you around and they provide you with buffers and hatch out of eggs, and just a ton of replayability too. The sense I got with Neon Abyss was it knew the importance of freedom and let me just go crazy and experiment. Where else in the opening 15 minutes of a game do you find yourself floating on a balloon, firing a gun that's actually a cat, all while you can remap the controls to your liking. It's fun stuff, this one. My only complaint here, honestly, towards the end game, started to feel a little too repetitive, and it could have done with just maybe pushing the difficulty notch up one more. For me though, it's a solid and a great 8 out of 10. Alright, so as a newbie to this series, but about a month ago I dove into Rock of Ages 3, and basically this is part puzzle racer, part tower defense. A round goes like this: the build phase, so you choose defensive measures along the track and you put them in place. These are to slow down your opponent. Then the attack phase, you basically roll your boulder towards your enemy and destroy them. The winner, of course, determined by who does the most damage. They then take this gameplay and package it up in a single player story mode that actually, I've got to say, has a solid take on the Monty Python style of humour, local play, online play, and even a track creator, making this one honestly near endless. And that would be amazing if I wasn't already honestly bored before I wrapped things up in story mode. This game, it just never really goes anywhere. You'll change maybe to a different boulder, a few different defenses, but that's really about it. Humour can only carry a game so far, and that's on full display here. Also with this one, I've got to say some noticeable performance issues. The boulder moments smooth and fast, but you will see pretty frequent frame rate drops. This one's an average 5 out of 10 for me. It's decent enough in concept, but it just struggles to really bring anything different to the table as you progress. And at the moment, I gotta say, it's also a little overpriced. I'd like to see it in a sale before I could recommend it. So a small indie for you now, Rainswept. I went in with really low expectations here, and what I got absolutely surprised me. It's basically a point and click adventure clearly influenced by Twin Peaks, which is absolutely never a bad thing. Gameplay comes down to basically move the aiming reticle on screen and choose either the next location, who you talk to, or what you interact with. The story though is what elevates this one. It's not overly complicated, but as bite-sized adventure goes, I was just intrigued. Basically here you're taking on the role of Detective Michael Stone, and you're sent to a small town to solve the mystery of a couple who, wound up dead. Stone though, he of course comes with his own personal issues, and you'll find his sanity absolutely pushed to its limits, and things can get pretty trippy here. This is a relatively short trip, around 5 hours, but I really enjoyed every minute of it, and with that in mind, I'm giving it a great 8 out of 10. My only request, a little more on the side of detective here, would have really elevated the whole game, let me take part in some investigations, because it basically results in just a few conversations and questions. So now, Buried Stars, I'll put it out there now, this game is incredible. Here we have a visual novel, but it has more in common with games like AI and Phoenix Wright, meaning it's not just, constant reading with the occasional decision, but actually doing some investigative work. You can even die here should you make some mistakes along the way. Here's the idea though, you're all taking part in a talent show broadcast live across the nation. During the series finale, a disaster occurs and the stage and building around you just collapse. While the audience itself escapes, you find yourself now trapped within the rubble. Now you must not only survive till the rescue team can get to you, but it seems a murder has occurred, and This may not be as natural as everyone believes, so you've got to figure that out. Come here to solve the mystery and survive. Choose who you want to talk to though, what the topic will be, interact with your social media, use your smartwatch to not only survive but message people, build relationships or destroy them, respond to posts on like their rip-off of Facebook. The idea of the visual novel tag just sells this one short because it's so much more than that. With stunning presentation then from the visuals to the audio, I went in expecting this honestly to be a little overpriced and I was so very wrong. An amazing 9 out of 10 from me and I liked it so much I'm actually currently importing a physical copy. Great game. From the mighty to the weak then with Clan N, I had high hopes for this one as it promised old school action with up to 4 players online and off, but sadly I gotta say this thing was just dead on arrival. I know patches are like coming, including a shorter variation of the overlong levels that make up single player, but I fear it may be too late. Here's what my experience looked like. 5 minutes into online, crash. Tried again, same thing. Tried again, same thing. Gave up on that idea, tried single player. 45 minutes in, crashed. Lost my progress too. Quit to the main menu and uninstalled the game. I'll be checking this one out maybe when it hits a super heavy discount, but it seems this one has already just kind of disappeared into obscurity in the Nintendo eShop. And I gotta say, it might be the best place for it, but it really is a shame to say that. No score on this one today. As I said, my experience with it was broken. With the fixes on the way, I will update you as I get more info. Alright, so 5 more games to go and all of these dropped in just the last week. First, Banner of the Maid. I've spent a couple of weeks with this game and I gotta say I was hooked from the beginning, thanks mainly to its kind of like unique setting. It's an alternate take on the French Revolution era. It starts out a little slow, I've gotta say, a whole lot of like talking for story as well as like just teaching you the ropes, you know, but once it gets going, the turn-based strategy is really good stuff. Set within like small maps, so it's kind of bite-sized strategy, and I just really have enjoyed playing this one for like 20 minutes here and there, especially, I've got to say, handheld on the go. My only real complaint is the difficulty. It can be a little bit flat, and I would have liked to have seen it kind of ramp just a little bit quicker and a little bit more. Genre fans, basically, you shouldn't find anything too challenging here. That said, if you are new to the genre, great starting point. Overall, look, really impressed again, and it's a great 8 out of 10. Alright, so now Volta-X, and stylistically at least, this might be my favourite on today's like video, channeling like this retro cartoon style that's perfectly animated, or at least in its cutscenes. Sadly though, this is also its main problem. It's very much a great example of style over substance. Here's the idea: you pilot a Volta and basically a big ass mech. Once they were used for war, but this war ended and they were like repurposed for entertainment. In fact, it's a sporting event where Voltas go 1v1 and your goal: beat the crap out of each other and win the championship. The gameplay is basically a take on the turn-based combat genre with some base building, leveling up, and then resource management in between. Once you get past the cutscenes though, honestly, it all kind of feels a little bit bland if anything, and the gameplay is basically choose your attacks, and then you can also move the pilot's location to either avoid like incoming attacks or actually overpower certain moves. So for example, if you sit in the fist, it's going to increase the power of the punch. The biggest problem though here is the controls. They're just not optimized to the controller very well. I can see where like a keyboard and mouse setup might be okay, but here I just didn't enjoy the navigation or the menus. As it stands, I haven't finished this one, so I'm not going to be, you know, attaching a score to it, but I think the way I feel right now is deep sale first, and even then a stipulation: you've got to be a real big fan of turn-based combat because this is extremely repetitive. The longest title now on today's review breakdown: Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Familia Myth Infinite Combat. It's based upon the manga and anime of the same name. First off, I'm going to put it out there, never watched or read any of the material myself, so I'm coming in as like a complete noob. But I've got to give it to it, they actually do a good job of like presenting its story. It's not the deepest, but it was just enough that I felt like I had an idea of, you know, what the hell was going on. Story presentation as well, the cutscenes, the voice work, even the transitions between graphics, really nice work, and I was impressed. Sadly though, this one does fall down in 2 areas. First, the graphics in gameplay moments are pretty awful, honestly. Graphics don't mean much, but this one feels just borderline lazy as they give you like this isometric viewpoint of repetitive dungeons with super low quality textures. I like the character models, but even then I will say the whole experience has this like almost blurred look to it. Then the gameplay too, it's okay, but it's extremely repetitive and simplistic as it tries its hand at an almost like mystery dungeon vibe. Basically, get into a dungeon, complete story missions, defeat enemies and repeat. Sadly though, the lack of variety in these missions and the simplistic action RPG combat just left me feeling kind of bored by the midway point. It's also, I gotta say, relatively short for the genre too, though I'm sure there is still a lot of like side missions I could go back for. Genre fans, check it out, but honestly it does very little to establish itself in the impressive RPG library the Switch has. A slightly above average 6 out of 10 from me on this one. Get this one though around the $20 mark and I think I'd feel a lot more generous with this score. The penultimate game of today's roundup then, the Ambassador Fractured Timelines. This is one I was excited for as it combined two things I love. A fantasy-like setting with twin-stick shooting sounded near perfect as I would get to wild like magic and face all sorts of foes. Sadly though, what we get is something very mediocre. The controls are decent enough but aiming can be like finicky. It touts the ability to freeze time, which is little more than a gimmick, and honestly I used it for like the first hour, completely forgot about it except for when the game was forcing me to use it. A good gameplay element does not need to be forced on you. Then the weapons overall just kind of bland and actually quite slow, like throwing like spears and swords and stuff. Finally, the graphics, I love me some pixel work, but this one for me was a little on the excessive side, borderline. I kind of struggled to make out almost a few items inhabiting this world. I think if they pulled the camera back just a little bit, it would have worked a lot better. With a 3 hour or so runtime as well, it's impressive how limited the cast of enemies is. There's the odd entertaining boss, I'll give it that, but it's just bringing absolutely nothing new to the table, and it's been done on the Switch better countless times before at a much lower price. With this one, it's an average 5 out of 10 for me. It was relatively painless getting through it because it was so short, but I would be waiting for a deep sale before you jump in, as I'm now struggling to find any reasons to want to revisit it. So our final game then today, Bite the Bullet, and I really wanted to like this one. That's not to say it's bad, it just didn't reach my kind of anticipation levels. That said, look, all in all, it's a solid little roguelite. Basically choose your character and play either solo or co-op. The twist with this one is it's not just run and gun here, but you'll be able to actually eat your enemies when they're in like this stunned state. Everything from mutants through to robots. This system's interesting enough though, as your diet actually has implications on your character's abilities, but I gotta say, you got repetitive very quickly, and stopping and eating, it kind of slowed down the fast pace you're used to with run and gun platforming. With that though, one cool thing from the eating is you get to transform into your Sombro variation and basically the Hulk going on a rampage, and that's pretty badass. You can see the effort here though with skill trees, upgrades, tons of weapons, 50 levels. My two big problems here though, the controls felt a little loose. They could have done with the option to give me controller mapping honestly, because I don't know about you, but I hate the whole like attaching jump to a trigger. And then while 50 levels is great, it just didn't really have the creativity or the variety to keep me locked in that long. This is a prime example of a game that could have trimmed the fat just a little bit and benefited from it, and I had to do that. Overall, this one, it's above average and a 6 out of 10. This one, it's best enjoyed in small play sessions though, a few levels, you know, here and there every night. Don't like play it all in one go like I did, because that repetition kicks in quickly. I'd say get this one sub $10 though, which I'm sure we'll see, and I could support the decision to pick it up for sure. Like I said, not bad, just with such an out there like idea, it still doesn't really like manage to stand out. And that's a wrap. Our first quickfire review is done. Let me know what you think of this format in the comments below, and if there's any information you'd like me to start adding in future videos. I want to make this a monthly thing though, just to kind of respect the devs out there, and also like highlight some games you may have missed with the sheer number of Switch games we see released each and every week. I know I can't keep up, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Just know this will never replace like fully dedicated reviews. It just felt like a nice way to kind of have a backup option. With that, look, a big shout out then to the patrons of the channel who are just going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. It truly is appreciated, and yeah, thank you all so much. The patrons really helped with this one, giving feedback and information to put into this video. I couldn't have made it as smoothly without all of them. With that then, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.